Hello everyone, this is going to be a short little Python demonstration, actually the first video in a series of Python demonstrations. And just because this is the first video, let me give you a little context. I'm an MBA student at UC Riverside and I'm currently taking an Intro to Information Systems class. And we've been learning some Python in this class. So as someone who already knows Python, I honestly feel confident that I could be teaching this class. But I'm not going to complain about an easy A. I am at least happy that the business school is teaching code and getting integrated with STEM. But while Python may be easy to me, I've been noticing some of my classmates have a hard time getting adjusted when it's their first time using a programming language. And I'm a self-taught programmer, so I completely understand the feeling of hopelessness people have when starting out. But learning code is not as hard as you think. Contrary to popular belief, you don't need to be good at math, even though I am good at math. But, once you're able to commit Python's keywords and some of the features, some of the important Python features, once you're able to commit those to memory, you'll be able to think programmatically. And so any problem you have, you'll be able to think through it in a way that Python recognizes. And you'll be able to use Python as a tool to solve problems. And so as a beginner, you might not really think about using Python outside of doing homework, but hopefully if you follow along, follow my videos, you'll be able to see the real-life application that programming has. Okay, so let's get started on this demonstration. So step 1, get 3 numbers from the user. Assume the user will type in only whole numbers. The numbers could be positive or negative. Don't forget to add helpful prompts for the user. Okay, so that sounds like we're going to be creating 3 variables, asking for user input for each variable, converting the user input to an integer, and storing that integer in those 3 variables. That is pretty simple. So for the first variable, that we want, int1. And as you can see, int1 is going to be equal to user input converted to an integer for all 3 of them. int1, int2, int3. So there we go. Step 1 is solved. Okay, so now that we have the user input saved in our variables, we can start comparing the values. So how do we compare values? Simple. We use conditions. And in Python, we use if, elif, else statements. So how do we determine which number is the smallest? What I would do is I create an if statement. And I'd say if int1 is less than int2 and int1 is also less than int3, that means int1 is the smallest number. As you can see, this is showing that int1 is less than int2 and it's also less than int3. This and keyword, it pairs together 2 conditions, and it basically states that this if condition will only be executed if the condition on both the left and right side of this and statement are true. So if int1 is less than int2 but greater than int3, this if statement won't be executed. But if int1 is less than int2 and it's also less than int3, we're good and this if statement will be executed. Okay, great. So now we have the first if statement handling if the first integer is the smallest. And so let's just print smallest number, comma, int1. And quite simple, you would just repeat repeat this same process for all three of the conditions. So elif int 2 is less than int 1 and int 2 is less than int 3, that means the smallest number is int 2. And now we'll say elif int 3 is less than int 1 is also less than int 2, there we go. So that handles part 2 of this question. And to prove it, let's run this program. First number 10, 5, and when I type 1, we should get smallest is 1. Smallest 1. Good. So it looks like we're good to move on to the next part of this question. Determine how many numbers are equal. Print that number along with some descriptive text to inform the user of what is being printed to the screen. So we're going to handle this comparison in a similar way that we handled this one. Except instead of using greater or equal signs, we're going to use the equals operator. So how do we start that? How many numbers are equal? First, if int 1 equals int 2 and int 1 also equals int 3, that means all of our numbers are equal. So all three numbers are equal. Okay, so next. So now we're going to see if only two of the numbers are equal. Elif. So now this condition is going to check if the first and second integer are equal. If int 1 equals int 2, we're going to add another AND statement, and this time we're going to say int 1 does not equal. So right here we're saying if the first and second number are the same, but the third number is not the same, execute this statement. And we're going to say first and second numbers are equal. And then we're going to now check the comparison to see if the second and third numbers are equal. 2 equals int 3, and so this has to mean that this has to mean that integer 1 and 2 are not equal. So this is going to mean the second and third numbers are equal. And so now we're going to do another elif to see if the first and third numbers are equal. Print first and third numbers are equal. And what happens if none of these conditions are true? What happens if none of them are equal? Or what happens if none of the statements are equal? We're going to use an else block to handle that output. Else print none of the values are equal. And I think this program should be done. But let's double check and run it. Please input the first number. So let's first do it as if two of them are equal. 10, 10, 5. Smallest 5. The first and second numbers are equal. Oh, that works. Alright, let's run it again then. Let's now say all the numbers are equal. All numbers are equal. There's no greatest number, so they can only be equal. And let's try it again where none of the numbers are equal. So 4, 10, just some random big number. Smallest is 4, none of the values are equal. And boom, we have concluded our demonstration. And so if we're just going to talk our way through this code as we finished. To get 3 numbers from the user and convert them to whole numbers, we define 3 variables, int1, int2, and int3. And we set the value equal to the user input converted to an integer, which is a whole number. So now that we have our value stored, we can start our first comparison. And our first comparison looks at which numbers are the greatest, which is the smallest. And so we have an if, elif block that tells us if the first is the smallest, if the second is the smallest, if the third is the smallest. And that's step 2. And then step 3, we're now looking to see how many, if any, of the values are equal. So if all the values are equal, we're equal. And then these elifs right here check if the first and second are equal, the second and third are equal, the first and third are equal. And if we make it through all these statements and none of these statements provide true in the condition, then this else statement is going to be printed where it states none of the values are equal. And there we have it, our first demonstration, which hopefully wasn't too hard. There wasn't that much implemented in this demo. We had variables, user input, converting data types, if, elif statements, and decision operators. Alright, there we go. So I'll see you guys next time.